grew up in a small chemical manufacturing town called Widnes, in between Liverpool and Manchester. I had, perfectly normal upbringing, loving family, got one sister. My parents encouraged further education. Back then, in that town, further education was frowned on. For example, some people my age would just leave school and go off to work in the factories and stuff like that, and they'd mock the people who were going on to college and uni. But I went on to do sixth form, to do A levels, maths, physics, and economics. As a teenager, I developed an almost unnatural interest in the stock market from about 14 years old. That came about because my teacher at St. Joseph's High School, my economics teacher, Mr. Dillon, only about 6 people were doing economics, and he saw I had this interest in it, and he started to give me classes on my own. He really took me under his wing. In the lunchtime, for example, he'd be explaining to me from the Financial Times, all the different numbers mean, and what it, it was like a foreign language to me at that time. But he was explaining how all the terminology, and I went down to the library, ordered dozens of books on the subject of the stock market and finance, and at 16, I was so interested in it, I borrowed £50 off my nan, invested it in British Telecom shares, and they doubled. And I was just over the moon. It was like, you could make money like this. And that was the beginning of my lifelong obsession with the stock market, which I still have to this day. First thing I do when I go home is I check what the stock market's done, how Wall Street's closed, and certain shares that I follow. So as a teenager as well, I was obsessed with computer games. And back then, my computer was an Atari 400. This was back in the 1980s. 16K, I think it was. I couldn't decide whether I was going to get a job in finance or as a computer programmer, because I was programming my own games, like little programs back then as well. So that's why I went on to do A-level maths, physics, and economics. I was hedging my bets, basically. I could go in either direction, finance or computer programming. Then, spent 3 years at Liverpool Uni doing business studies. Back then, we didn't have to pay the unis for our education, but how I made money was I started to just invest in all of these privatisations that Margaret Thatcher's government was doing at the time. And it expanded from me not just putting money in my name, but all my different family members were putting money in their names as well in these accounts that I was opening for them. And, that got me through uni with extra money. And I went on to Phoenix, Arizona after that, because as a teenager, I'd visit my aunts in Arizona, and coming from this little town, Widnes, I'd go to Arizona, and as the plane was landing, I'd see all these big houses and the swimming pools in the backyards. And then once we landed, my aunt and uncle would pick us up, and the roads were like twice as big, and everything just was dazzling me. You have to be 21 to get in a nightclub in Arizona, in America in general, I believe. But as a teenager, I think I was about 16. My aunt, she changed the date of birth in my passport so that I was 21. And she took me to all these nightclubs, and she was introducing me to all these older women, as Paul McCartney's nephew. And it was just blowing them away. I was getting all this attention. So you can imagine the effect that had on the young me. I was thinking, yeah, when I graduate, I want to move out here, because this is the land of opportunity. You can make so much money in America. And everywhere I was going, as soon as they heard my English accent, they just rolled out the red carpet for me. So I was just plain Jane old me in Widnes, Cheshire. But once I got to America, it was like a really amazing feeling how the people treated the English out there. So all those factors were at work. Growing up in this little town where I had no money, my goal was, I'm going to go to America and make $1 million in the stock market. And my friends, they didn't get some of the same qualifications I had, and I promised them, because when I made that money, I would fly them over to America. There's actually a little quarry at the top of my town, Widnes, called part of an area called Peck's Hill, which is in the countryside. And we had a tree overlooking the quarry. We'd break through the fence and climb this tree, and we actually called it the thinking tree. And that was where me and my mates would sit perched on this tree overlooking this quarry. And that's what I promised them, that I'd go to America and make $1 million and fly them all over, and I did.